All right. Are we live? What about Cass? Are we up? Do you see me? Okay. All right. What's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to my first live broadcast. We're working some things out still. I have not messed with this OBS software much, so I've done a little practice on it. And Cass and I did a little run through last night, but we just worked out an issue that we didn't think we would have, which is we had some echoing going on in audio. So what's up, guys? I see some people logging in. Cool. Um, so, like I said, this is my first live broadcast. We may have some issues to work through. I've got Cass on the line, and he's a little pixelated. So, again, some issues I got to work through. But I think we carry on the conversation with him and talk about the history of DLM and Lake Monster Details as it is today. I think a lot of people aren't aware that Lake Monster Details is DLM, and we'll get into the history of that and talk about some of the goods that Cass has to offer right now. And let's see if we can pull Cass up here. You see yourself there, Cass?
There's a little bit of a time delay
Yes.
between the
Yeah.
YouTube video,
Right.
so
There's
I'm
gonna be a
just
couple
gonna
second delay.
right. So, hi, I'm Cass. I've met quite a few of you at Wonderfest. So yeah.
So, Cass, you and I, we've been friends for I would like to say for a very long time, but we've been friends about what 5 years, I guess.
5 years, yeah.
About 5 years, and I don't quite remember how that started out. I know I was working on my smoothie build, which still haven't finished. It's still sitting in the box waiting to be completed. But that's kind of how we got to talking was uh, I'd gotten some parts from you and we were kind of communicating back and forth. And I was just starting up my YouTube channel then. I was like, hey, would you mind sponsoring me? Just and you're like, okay. You're like, no, well, I don't want to sponsor you, nobody. But no, actually, you know what? I am grateful to you because I had probably less than a couple hundred viewers at that time, and you still supported me, and here we are a couple years later, and I've got some I got some subscribers. It's cool. I don't do what I do for fame. I do what I do for to support the community and the model community. Same as when I build or make these 3D parts that I'm sending to you, which we're going to talk about at some point. I don't know if we're going to talk about today or at Wonderfest, but I've got a lot of parts I've made, especially for this 1537 line for anybody that's been around watching. Um, I'm going to kind of let you talk here in a minute. I'm going to try to look at the chat. If anybody's got any questions for Cass, put it in chat. You can't see the chat feed, right? I don't think you can.
I can if I have it on
You
my
can if you have it on your
computer screen
computer.
over here.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm finding that with the delay, it kind of distracts me.
Right.
So I
Well,
turn
you
my
don't worry
monitor off.
about that. You don't worry about that. I will pay attention to the chat feed and kind of try to take any questions that people have for you. But maybe wait a little bit
Okay.
before we have questions. We're gonna let Cass kind of talk here for a bit, and just kind of, I guess, Cass, the first thing is kind of go back in history a little bit and tell us a little bit about what you know as far as Don and how he got started, and how this whole DLM thing came about.
Well, when Don first started out, I didn't know him. Uh, but I know that he had been inspired by a book that was written by a guy named Paul Newitt. And it was basically like the Federation assembly guide for Star Trek models. And I think those are the models for like Enterprise from the 60s, and the Klingon cruiser, some of those early model kits that came out. And what Paul had written about was how to add a sense of realism to these models by adding, electronics, even like household items, even that you could that had kind of like a science fiction look to them that might, um, improve on the model that was issued. Uh, and Don Matthews was very inspired by that, and then he had done the same thing. And there's also, this idea that in terms of resin casting, that dentists would use like some kind of a material for a mold to make like a molding of your mouth, uh, and then you would pour like a plaster or a resin into that mold, and then you'd have a highly detailed mold of your teeth structure, and and Paul knew it, or people like Paul knew it. I think maybe Paul was the first one that came up with this, but if dentists can use it for um, you know for model making of teeth, why can't modelers do that for their model kits? And uh, and I kind of think that's kind of where the concept of making some of these extra pieces was really being put to use. And I'm sure that it's been going on for years and years and years before. But I think with Paul Newitt and his book really brought that idea to the forefront. And I think that's how people like Don Matthews was born. So
Hey,
um,
so
I think he
let
first
me just
started.
let me interrupt you a second there, Cass, Chas. Hey,
Sure.
Chas, how are you? Hey, so just a question. I mean, because I know you're going to progress through this, but so a lot of people know Don for his sci-fi parts, his mainly Star Trek stuff that he was doing, and but he was a military man, right? I mean, he had a military history, and he worked. But he served. Which wars did he serve in? He served in the war, right? Okay, first Gulf.
He Yep, and he was a mechanic, worked on tanks. He had a lot more armor models on display at his apartment than he did Star Trek models. He had just a huge case of tanks and jeeps and
Did they? And I'm showing a picture of him holding one of his models. Looks like at a model show or something now. Right, right.
and I think you have it too. That I recovered from his apartment after he had passed, and this is Don, actually in front of one of the tanks. I believe this was taken in the 1980s. Uh,
Oh, okay. All right.
but so that's
Yeah, I've
what he
got
did,
that.
and he was
I've
ve-
got that same picture. I'll put it up so it's a little bit of a clearer view. But I think this is one you scanned. I think you scanned that same photo and shared it. I think that's what this is from. Oh, I've just been told we're losing your sound whenever I show pictures, so I've got to figure that out. Like I said, it's a bit of
okay.
a
That's no good.
no. Like I said, it's a bit of a learning curve here. So I might have to add your source in to when I show the photos. So if I want to keep you on the here, so we'll work that out. But again, this is my first stream, and we're working through things. So, but yeah. So I just want to show something. I have this, but I dug it out, and this is the cutaway pack
Yep.
that he put out, and it's still in the original box. $60 back then must be pretty good, but and $60 might say, but you got a lot of stuff with this box. And I know you looked at this and you said that some of it's original, some of it's uh, from somewhere else. We don't know where, but I mean, it had all the parts, like the upgraded parts. I've got his upgraded bridge. I guess that is. Is that his bridge?
Yep. BC deck and bridge module.
And I've got a upgraded dish. So it's got some pretty good parts to it. And one thing I didn't know till I got this kit is that Don was doing electronics. Was he? I guess he
Yes,
wasn't doing
he
too much
was.
of it. Yeah, he was dabbling in it at least because there's electronics in this. But he had some great stuff, and I know a lot of people were looking. He's got a lot of schematics that he did for doing the work on it, but and a whole book, a whole a whole book on the Constitution class. But he had some great stuff that he was putting out, and a lot of people that was the go-to source for upgrades for a long time.
Right, and I think those electronics, some of those did come from Paul Newitt. Those were his circuit boards. Uh, I when I took over, I chose not to do the electronics because those electronics they are outdated. And I, electronics and those kinds of things and me, we just don't really get along. And I wanted to leave that up to people that knew what they were doing. Leave that up to like kind of controls or some of the other places that are offering those electronics. I'm a hands-on person. I'm a parts person, and I wanted to kind of keep that going instead. So
Yeah. So how did you? I mean, I know we have talked about this, but just so everybody knows, how did you come into meeting Don and kind of learning what? Because you were helping Don out for a while too, I believe you said. And then when he passed, there was this whole transitional thing where you acquired the DLM, I guess the DLM rights, I guess to an extent. But just
yeah,
walk us through that just a little bit, and how that came about, and how you met Don and started working with him and everything.
okay. So we'll go back about 20 some years. I think it was 2002 or 2003. Um, now, what a lot of people don't know about me is I'm actually a ship person. My my big passion is sailing ships and seagoing ships. And and back then, I was building a 1/350th scale model of the Lusitania. It was a model kit that Gunzi Sangyo had released back years ago, and the version of that model was during like the early years of the ship, and there weren't enough lifeboats on board for everybody, which was changed after the Titanic sank. That then all the ocean liners all got fitted with new lifeboats. And there was also some other changes as well that were made to that ship. And I wanted to build the World War I version of the Lusitania, how it looked on its last voyage when it got torpedoed. And I needed to duplicate a bunch of parts, including boats and cranes and some other things. I had no idea how, I mean, I couldn't find these pieces online anywhere. This model kit was no longer in production. And someone had mentioned a guy that works with resin, and that's how I met Don. He said the guy that told me that you should meet this guy. His name is Don. He works at Hobbytown in Fargo, North Dakota, which is where I was living across the river at that time from Fargo. And so I stopped in and I met Don, and he made these parts for me for my model. And him and I just kind of kept in touch ever since. And and it was quite a few years went by for a while, and then I started getting into Star Trek models a little bit. uh i was I probably hadn't touched a Star Trek model in a decade, and I came across a few models, and it kind of was like, well, I had a lot of fun with these when I was a teenager. And then I was on the internet, and I was kind of looking for whatever I could get for these, and that's why I came across DLM. And uh and then I remembered, oh, that's Don. That's Don's site. And so then we kind of rekindled things again. And then I think in 2014, um, I had approached Don and I said, you have uh, inserts for the 1537 refit for the officer's mess. Why don't you make one for the 1/350th scale refit? And he didn't seem like he was very interested in that. And I was really trying to motivate him to, hey, you should do this. This thing would sell like hotcakes. And then he said, no, maybe you should do this. and as if he was kind of like challenging me. And I'm like, okay, fine. Obviously, you don't want to do this. So after I left his apartment that day, I went to this hobby store that was in my town where I lived in Moorhead, called Hobby Hut, and I picked up just all kinds of evergreen strips and some putty, and I spent that summer and I made a 1/350 scale officer's mess piece. And I took the whole summer to do it. I mean, I was taking summer classes at the time, so obviously, I did it when I could. But by the end of the summer, I stopped by Don's apartment and I showed him this piece, and he's inspecting this piece, and he's like, not this piece, but actually, I think I do have a piece. Here it is. This was the piece that I had made for Don,
Right. Right.
and so he's inspecting this, and he's like, "Oh wow, this is really nice." And I'm like, "Well, I would hope so." I said, I spent the whole summer working on it. And he's like, "Oh, really? Oh, hell, I could have done this over a weekend." I just, that was Don,
He give
Um,
you the
eh,
smackdown for how long it took you to do it, huh?
well, Don and I had this love-hate relationship going on the whole time. So, um, and so, and that's kind of where, when Don and I started kind of doing the resin casting together and all that. And this was, I think this started in 2014. And every so often I'd hang out at his place. We'd make resin parts, and he would show me how to pour resin and how to mix it and how to get the air bubbles out and how to do the silicone molds, and then I did a few other scratch builds for him as well. Um,
By
I
the way,
also did a
Cass.
scratch build.
Hey, by
Yeah.
the way, somebody's already mentioned that your parts don't smell like cigarettes. Okay.
Oh yeah. No, they
Like, I
better
know
not.
Don was a bit of a smoker, so
Yeah, he was. Well, some of the parts that he made that I had bastard probably did when he was still alive. This was also a part that I made for Don. It's an alternate lounge. It's not meant to be accurate. I know one guy was complaining, well, this doesn't look anything like the lounge from the motion picture. Well, it's like, well, that's because it's not supposed to be that lounge. It's supposed to be something a little different.
it's an alternate.
But
Gotcha.
but uh, I worked with Don quite a bit, uh, and then eventually I did move to Duluth, Minnesota, which is about 4.5 hours away. I just always wanted to live in Duluth because I've always been a ship person, and I wanted to be by the Great Lakes
And you're
and
and
where all
you're
the
a glut
ships are.
you're a glutton for punishment with winter weather.
Yeah, I actually don't mind it. It's the extreme heat I can't stand.
Oh, I love it
But
here. I love it here.
yeah, we had
I
90
don't like the
degrees.
humidity. I can't do it, which is why I moved to Nevada from Virginia, because it's hot here, but it's drier heat. But actually, right now it's still kind of cold. It's taking
Yeah,
its
it's
time, just like where you're at. It's taking its time to warm up. But
well, we had 90 last weekend, and now it's 50 and chilly. So, but that's Minnesota weather for you.
right, right. So you moved to Duluth to be closer to the snow blowing off the Great Lakes.
Right. Well, to be fair, winters in Duluth are much better than winters in Fargo because, first off, we have hills, we have trees. Fargo does not. It's very flat. There's nothing there to stop the wind. But living just a few blocks from the largest freshwater uh, sea in the world, uh, has the advantage that it keeps things a little cool on those really hot days in the summertime because the lake is always cold. But in the wintertime, when the lake doesn't really freeze over, it actually tames the temperatures. So we could be 20 degrees warmer in Duluth than and other places out in the Midwest.
Hmm.
And so so I kind of traded that for a much more mild winter.
So did you move out
And
there before? Was this before Don had passed that you moved out there?
correct.
Okay,
Yep, I moved here in 2016, and Don passed away in 2019.
2019. Right.
But I was still doing stuff for him. I was doing decal art for him. He wanted me to redo all of the decals for his two shuttle bay kits. The the 350th scale kit. He asked me to completely redo the decal for the floor. And then I also was working on the decal for the 1537 shuttle bay as well. And it was around that time when I completed those decals was when Don had passed away. I can't say that I was surprised when it happened, but at the same time I kind of was, because I knew that Don was in poor health. Um, he was overweight. He smoked like a train. Um, and he went out to eat a lot. He very rarely had food he had more resin in his fridge than he did food. So uh, yeah. So when we usually, when him and I would go out to eat, we would go to, his favorite kind of food was Chinese. So there was this Chinese place that was down on Broadway in Fargo. I don't know if they're still around anymore, but he always ate there. Uh, but he was going to have a surgery uh, that he told me about, and I don't necessarily know exactly what happened. All I know is that he had something went wrong. He he kind of threw a fit. He was pulling all of his hoses off and his IVs, and then eventually he died. And that's kind of what his brother told me. And uh and I think there was a lot more stuff that was going on. He didn't have health insurance at the time, so there was a lot of things that needed to be worked on with him that I think was neglected. And I just think a lifetime of bad habits finally caught up with him.
And that was
So
kind of that was a pretty sad time for the modeling community when Don passed too, because I mean we've had some pretty uh, the passing of some pretty big contributors to the modeling, especially the Star Trek modeling community. You had Ian Lawrence about 2 years ago, I think now, and I'm still working on his build. I got his 1350 sitting here that I'm working on, and then last year, sadly, we had Boyd over at TrekWorks that passed, which was just shocking because whenever I had talked to Boyd a handful of times because we were looking, he was planning on starting back up his I don't remember if it was a live broadcast or something, but he was looking for people to kind of chat with in the modeling community, and I was talking to him about being on TrekWorks on his cast, I don't know if it's podcast, but his stream or whatever it was he was planning. But I know he was getting better. He thought he was going to beat the whole thing, and then all of a sudden it was like that he had passed, and it was like crushing, because here's a man that contributed a lot. But then Don contributed not really video so much, but he contributed actually what people used, not techniques, but
right.
actual materials that people use to improve their builds and make them look more realistic and add lighting and all that. So, it was really sad when he passed away. And the unfortunate thing is there were some bad actors out there once he passed that were copying his work and reselling it
Yes.
in between the time that he
Yes.
passed and you took over. Because I believe that's about the
And
time that we started communicating was not long after you had taken over.
right. And one thing I should add, back going kind of back a little bit before Don passed away. Another thing I did when I moved to Duluth was I was going to start my own company having to do with resin casting. Um, it had nothing to do really with Star Trek except for the items that I was going to be making for Don. I was going to make some products that would sell on his website, which I designed the bridge decals for the TOS, the 1/350 scale. Those were an item that Don was selling. And then, of course, those two inserts, the lounge and the officer's mess, and those were under kind of my logo. But what I was actually starting a business here was I was actually going to be making lake freighter kits. That's what Lake Monster was supposed to be. working with wood and like wooden hulls and resin for deck houses and photo etch for railings, and that's what Lake Monster was going to be. And even after Don had died, I'd still continued that. And when I know before Don was like a few months before his passing, I know that Don was kind of thinking about retiring. Um, and he was looking for someone to carry on the business. And I told him that I would love to, but I just there was I just I didn't see how it would be possible. And just because I was working full time, plus I had other things that I was doing, and my own business that I was trying to start. And so after Don had passed, which his brother had called me, his brother Keith had told me about it, and uh, and they didn't really know what they were going to do with any of it. They didn't understand what Don's business was. They weren't his brother and sister. They weren't modelers. They didn't know anything about it, and
Because
it
they
almost
actually
kind of
ended up
seemed like they
throwing
were
away
just
some. They ended up throwing away some stuff, right? That you can't recover
they
because
threw
it
away
ended
a
up.
lot of stuff.
So we lost a
Well,
lot of molds and what do you call it? The master, I guess,
the
was making the
masters.
molds. Yeah,
Don was a hoarder. Um, he had been in that apartment for a very, very long time. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised if it had been there since the '80s, but that's his place was full of stuff.
and
And
cigarette smoke.
oh god, the funny thing about that with that you mentioned the whole thing about the smoking is that I've never tried tobacco in my life. I've never ever smoked ever,
Really?
and I take over a business from someone where they always, I mean, when I got home, my girlfriend would make me take a shower to get this because she said I smelled like an ashtray when I came home.
Right.
So and
Well,
in the
my
apartment,
problem was smelling like diesel being in the trucking business. So I don't know which is worse,
so
cigarette smoke or the diesel smell.
I don't know. Talk to a U-boat person and see what they think. They would probably trade the cigarette smoke for the diesel fumes. Um, so when his brother and me were going through the apartment, uh, a lot of stuff had been thrown away at this point, and I asked them to, whatever you do, hold on to the masters. Well, actually, I called him from Duluth, and I said, whatever you do, do not throw the masters away. That is the heart and soul of what Don has done his whole life. And so when I finally met up with them, they gave me a box, and I could tell there was pieces in it, and I'm like, okay, good, the masters, good. And what they really were they were either castings that he had made, or they were molds. And there was only one master that was preserved, and that was the BC deck for the refit. And I was just absolutely sick. I was sick to my stomach. Um, and I went back to Duluth with so many boxes worth of molds that I think my muffler was dragging on the road behind my car. That's how heavy the boxes were. But just nothing for masters, and almost all the molds were in bad shape. And Don never threw anything away. Even the bad molds, he never threw them away. I had molds that were worn out, and it took me months to go through and find out which molds were still good. And a lot of these molds you can't tell unless you make a part out of them, because you can't see the inside of the mold. Uh, but I honestly, at that point, I was kind of thinking maybe that DLM was maybe done for. Uh, and about 2 months after about a month and a half after I had recovered as much of Don's work as I could, I myself had a stroke, and that happened while I was working at my day job, and it wasn't I was hospitalized for a day. It wasn't a real severe one, but it slowed me down. It caused some problems, and it really delayed things. And I think maybe about 3 months later, I was kind of feeling motivated to continue to go through Don's molds and find out what was salvageable and what was not. And I was going to see if anybody wanted them. Um, I put a few feelers out there. I didn't really
So you
hear
weren't
much
you
back
weren't
from
even
anybody.
looking at this time. You weren't even looking to carry on Don's legacy. You were just kind of you weren't sure that you want to get into that. And so you actually thought about just
Too
selling
much.
the stuff off at some point to somebody that maybe would put it to use.
Right, because the way I felt is that, hey, I'm taking the time to to sort out which molds are still good, and not to mention I'm also paying for the resin to test these molds because his resin all got threw away. Um, that that I would maybe just sell the molds and that to everybody and whatever computer files that Don had. Um, I didn't think at the time that there was enough left with DLM to really save or to keep it going.
Wow.
And it really broke my heart because Don was a dear friend. He had, it just felt like his legacy had been thrown away in the trash. And not long after, uh, I would go on like eBay or something, and I would see parts that were clearly Don's
Yes.
that
Yes.
that that were not being sold as DLM parts. They were being sold as whatever somebody had made a recasting of.
Yeah. Especially
And
the chiller grills for the 1537 Reliant.
yeah, those were
And they
those
were
were the big ones.
and they were really terrible. Because I ended up getting a pair of those because at the time this was that transition where DLM wasn't around. You couldn't get the parts from them, and that's the only place you could get them was from some third party person that had made copies. And they were terrible copies, and I think that's what ended up making me reach out to you, or you might have noticed the build and said that those looked familiar. I don't remember how that came
You
about, but I don't know if you do. But I know I had a pair of those grills I'd bought off eBay, and they were terrible cast. They were definitely not
right.
Don's quality.
Yep. And so when I saw that, there's something about Don's parts that I could recognize.
Right.
Uh, I mean, it's hard to describe. There's like a style of that part or something, where I could identify. Okay, they could be completely different brands. They could be the identical part, but there's something about Don's parts that I could identify.
You're like a
And
bloodhound with
and
that stuff because you could definitely tell. Because that's like when I bought this. You were with me when I bought this at Wonderfest. What, 2 years ago, or was it last year?
yeah,
No, 2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago.
And when I opened the box, I had you with me. I was like, "Hey, are these original?" And you were looking. You're like, That's not. That is. That is. All right, that's not original."
Right.
You kind of knew just by looking at it that it was Don's work or not. It's like the Franklin Mint, of authenticity. You're able to look at it and say that's Don's work, or that's not Don's work.
Right. And so when I saw that on eBay and Etsy and other stuff, my blood boiled over. Um, I was absolutely pissed, and and I think that was what motivated me to say, you know what, I am going to bring this back. I'm not going to let these people rip off Don's work, and that's what motivated me to restore these parts if I could and remaster the ones that needed to be remastered. And and I think around that time, I think there had been some talk.
Oh,
I'd been talking to Steve Iverson from Cult TV Man and my friend Mike Hazelwood, and and Mike had really motivated me to 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 get DLM going again. If it
That
wasn't for
Mike guy is
Mike,
quite a motivator.
yeah,
that
Mike
that Mike
Hazelwood,
guy,
yeah. Well,
he'll push you to do something if you're not sure, even if you're not sure you want to do it.
well, and the interesting thing was that Mike was more motivated, or he seemed more eager that DLM be continued. He did not want to see these parts disappear into history, neither did I. And so we were kind of working together, and Steve had agreed to carry the DLM line again if I could get it going again on his Cult TV Man site, and I think that's how uh, you
Sorry.
must have heard about me because your cat's trying to take your curtain down again.
They are. I've got. So I didn't say at the beginning of the show. I got this curtain up so you don't see the mess that's back there. My cats keep playing with it. I'm trying to swat them away. Like, go away, go away. So
No, they
I'm sorry.
succeeded in pulling it down once. So
Yeah, pre-show it was like whoop. No, there it went. But yeah.
yeah,
So I'm trying to keep that under control, which is why I kind of keep switching back to a camera view of you in case they rip my curtain down. I need to get something better back here. So it's something a little more sturdy than just hanging a curtain up because my cats are having fun with it right now. But go
no,
ahead. I'm sorry.
it's
I'm
like
sorry,
what
Cass.
my
Sorry for the.
girlfriend always tells me. They just want your attention.
Right.
Um, so that I think that's when you had reached out to me because you were working on the smoothie and I think you were somewhat far along enough on the smoothie to be really annoyed at the fact that, oh, now he's coming out with these parts again or something like that. Do you remember
Yeah. That.
that?
Yes, I do. There were parts because
You were kind of annoyed.
I was actually getting parts from somebody else, and you're my sponsor. I'm not going
Yeah.
to mention their name, but I was getting parts from somebody else, and I wasn't quite happy with them. And then here you are, you start re-releasing some of the DLM stuff, and I'm like, really, dude? Really, man?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Couldn't you have come out? I mean, that's kind of I've kind of got that going on with Jordan and Ken. I see Ken's in the chat room, but I've kind of got that going on with them right now because I keep coming up with these mods for the 1537. So they know what I felt like when you kept coming out with. It's like, oh man, and because I remember talking to you specifically about I wasn't happy about the shuttle bay opening, and you had I think you had re-released or you were working to re-release the mod for that for the 1537. Isn't that the one where you
Oh,
had to actually cut the tail off and put the? Didn't Don
yeah,
have that part?
the fantail piece.
Yes.
The fantail and the Dash A shuttle bay. Those molds were in horrible shape. Um, those my goal is to have those released this summer. Um, I need to I need to make some improvements though. They're like I said, the molds were in terrible shape. They were. I think the good ones were the good ones were either thrown away along with the masters. Uh, but that's why not everything is out yet. I could have released everything right from the get go, but it would have been junk. And
Right.
and I don't. If I'm going to be continuing Don's legacy, I need to have these things being perfect because, um, my name's on those, and
Right.
and I don't want to do a disservice to Don by releasing something that's subpar. And I think that's another reason why I was grinding my teeth to pulp just seeing some of this after junk that people were making. There was a guy from Florida. He reached out to me, and and he said he had bought the Warp Grills uh, for the 537 refit, and he said they were just terrible. And
Oh,
I said, "Can you
he
send?"
got the eBay
I
deal, huh? He didn't buy them from
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Actually, I think he said he got it from some. Well, yeah, maybe it was. Maybe well, we're going back like 5 years, but it was a guy that was trying to relaunch DLM under his own name, and uh, and that was very
Was that the
distracting for
guy
me.
that there was a guy overseas I think that was trying to do it, wasn't it?
I think this guy was local, but it wouldn't surprise me. I asked him if he would send me a picture of what he had received, and he sent me two pictures. He sent one picture of him holding the warp grill, and it was drooping down, which tells me that he didn't mix the resin good enough, or he had his proportions wrong. And then he showed me another picture of the piece laying flat, and there were more air bubbles and pockets than I could count on that thing.
Yeah. That's exactly what the deal was with the ones I got. Was they were just terrible. They had if you were going to backlay them, they were going to look like crap because they had all these
Right.
air bubbles and it was just a terrible. Whoever did it obviously didn't have the experience that you and obviously Don had in pouring. molds and making casts out of them and all that.
And you have to be careful with any kind of a lighting part because uh, I've thrown away hundreds of pieces because there was one little air bubble or maybe a foreign object got inside the mold. Uh, it needs to be perfect. I mean, not everything catches. My eye doesn't catch everything, but if I catch a small flaw, it's garbage. I can't. I can't sell that.
Right.
Uh, Pieces are going to get into mold or little specks of whatever are going to get into molds. If it's like a nebula kit and there's something that like a little tiny bit of gray resin got inside the clear and it's embedded inside the part, if it's as long as it's not blocking a window or blocking something that would be lit, I'll make an exception for that because resin's expensive and really it's not what it necessarily looks like. Uh, when you open it out of the package, it's what it looks like when it's painted and when it's lit, and that's the important thing. And but what I was seeing online was totally unacceptable, and I knew that Don was rolling in his grave, and I think that's why I decided that I was going to slowly but surely bring back DLM. I thought I'd have it out in 6 months. We're 4 years late. We're 4 years in, and I've still got some stuff that I'm still working on.
And you're kind
Plus some.
you're redoing some of the molds too, right? I think there were some parts that you were reworking, and like I
Yep.
know we've got to look, and I don't want to get too much into it, and I didn't tell everybody this from the get go, but we're kind of trying to hold off on talking about some stuff till Wonderfest because just like a lot of people like to do reveals at Wonderfest, there's some stuff that we want to talk about that I want to talk about with Cass, but we're going to save it for Wonderfest. But we'll try to answer. If you got any questions, please throw them out there at this time. I'll try to pick some off and throw them in as we're talking, Cass. But so you decided that you were going to revive DLM. You made a commitment to it, and then but you decided not to carry on the DLM name.
No. I think after about a year or so, I decided to include DLM as that I was DLM, because well, actually, I think it was even 2 years after that. A lot of people still thought that those parts were gone forever, uh, and so that's when I decided to put that DLM is now Lake Monster Details. Another reason why I didn't want to continue the DLM name,
Hold
I
up,
wanted to
hold up,
initially.
hold up a minute. Hold on now. It was not Lake Monster Details when you first started. It was Lake
No,
Monster
that's
Models.
that's true. Yeah, Lake Monster models. Yes.
Because I remember when you
Um,
changed it to Lake Monster Details, and you had a very good reason for changing it from Lake Monster Models to Lake
yeah.
Monster Details.
Lake Monster models. That was my. Well, first I was thinking it was going to be Lake Monster parts, and then I decided not to do that. So then I was Lake Monster models, and that was my name for a little while. And then um, I had had heard about some folks that were doing resin model kits were getting C&D'd. Uh, like UGG models and Don Choco and I was like, okay, um, I do not want to be known as a model maker. I am not coming out with full kits. I don't want to be stepping on, you know, licensees and I don't want to.
Right.
I just didn't want to get attention from anybody that's saying, hey, you don't have a license to be making that starship.
So you're trying to
And
distance
so
yourself from the idea that you're going to put out full models. You don't
right,
to try to keep from getting
and
that
I
C and D result that a lot of other model builders and model makers are getting.
Right. And I get requests all the time from people saying, "Hey, you need to come out with this starship or that starship." And I'm like, "Well, is there a conversion kit that you want me to make or no, just the whole starship?" And I'm like, "Nope, sorry. I can't." Even if it's not like, say Star Trek canon, it could be somebody else's design. And I don't want any to do with anything full models at all. I'm a parts person. You know, I the idea actually, believe it or not, Mike Hazelwood actually came up with the name Lake Monster
That
Details.
damn Mike guy. That Mike
Again,
guy.
Mike, that guy. Oh my God. Um, and I'm like, I kind of like that. That details, because it's not just parts, it's not just models. It could be decals. It could
Yep,
be
exactly.
someday masking sets. If I ever get a Cricut machine, it could be, the sky's the limit with details. So that ultimately stuck, or stood.
Right.
So
So do you
do you
want
have
to
a do you,
talk? I got your logo if that's what you were about to ask.
yeah, that was the
But if
thing
I
I was going to bring up.
if I put it up, we're going to lose your audio. So let me show it so everybody can see what we're talking. I'm sure everybody knows your logo, but let me show it. And then I was hoping to put it up so you could talk about it while it was showing. But since I seem to be losing your audio,
Yeah,
uh,
technology doesn't always agree. Yeah, go ahead and put it up.
all right. So there's the Lake Monster logo. Everybody can kind of take a look at that. It's yeah, it's wild. It's you got a little creative on that one. So go ahead, Cash. You're back up. You can talk about it now.
Okay. So when I first moved here to Duluth in 2016, there was a ship that was coming in between the under the lift bridge, and it was called the Roger Blau. And it was like a this ship was almost as big as the Titanic, just this massive freighter.
Oh wow.
And there was a guy that was watching the ship with me, and we were just kind of chatting, and he said to me, Lake Superior looks like a monster's head, don't you? And I'm like, no, I guess I never really thought about that. And then he pulled out his phone and he Googled Lake Superior, and he pointed out, well, this is where the eye is, this is where the nose is, this is where the mouth is. And so it looks like a monster's head. And I'm like, huh, wow, I never thought that before. And now whenever I see Lake Superior, all I see is a monster's head. And this was before I ever was going to go start a business, doing the lake freighter models or take over DLM or anything. It wasn't until a few years later when I was going to start this lake monster. Um, Actually, I think I was going to be called Superior Creations at that time,
Okay.
because people who live in the Great Lakes know what Lake Superior is, and if they'd see that as my logo, which was I'd added teeth to where the Keweenaw Peninsula was on the lake, where the mouth is. Royal Isle was the eye. Duluth is where the nose is, and then I just added a mohawk to it. Uh, and that's kind of where the logo came from. Is it's Lake Superior. I live right where the nose is,
So
and
it's not
that's
about a
that's
monster in the lake. It's not about the lake or the Loch Ness monster or anything like that, or Nessie or whatever. Whatever y'all have one up there supposedly in the Great Lakes somewhere too, don't y'all?
there's all kinds of tales of monsters in the lake. There have been Bigfoot sightings out this way, and I got a couple of books on that stuff. They're fun to read. I've not had any personal experiences myself, and I spent a lot of time kayaking on the big lake, and usually all I see are eagles and critters. So that's about
So
it.
so you told me to yesterday, and I'm just remembering you said to ask you about the shop vac.
Oh yeah, the shop vac. Okay, so this goes back to Don, his apartment. I was the last person to be in his apartment before the landlord took over. Uh, After Keith and his sister had handed off everything to me, he gave me the keys and he said, "Lock up when you're done." And then they hopped in their vehicle and they headed back to South Dakota. And so uh, I stayed behind to basically to salvage the stuff that was left behind, and looking for the masters, which they were long gone at that point. And so I was, loading stuff into my car and taking his molds, and I had his computer and all that. I opened up his closet, and they had, for some reason, they had forgotten to look in his closet, and there was a bunch of stuff in there. Not really much stuff of use, unfortunately. There was, some models, and but there was a shop vac that was in the closet. Well, I needed a shop vac because I needed, something to keep in my garage, and and if I needed to vacuum my car out or something. And uh, so anyways, I take this shop vac out of the closet, and I'm like, well, I better test it, make sure it works. And so I plug it in, and the hose was still in the closet, but you don't need a hose to test a shop vac. And I turned on the shop vac, not realizing that the motor setting was reversed. And Don used that shop vac to dump all of his cigarette ashes in. And when I started that shop vac up, it turned into a bomb, and I was completely covered in cigarette ashes. And my mouth was full of ashes, my nose was full of ashes, my eyes were full of ashes, and I just remember running to the bathroom and just retching in the toilet because
A parting
it
gift
was
from
like
Don.
it was a parting gift from Don that I still have PTSD about to this day.
So you've
But
got.
the vacuum
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, the vacuum cleaner did work, and I did end up bringing the shop vac to Duluth with me. So
And you still have it to this day, huh?
yeah, it's still in my garage.
Don's shop vac.
And I haven't used it because I'm too scared to use it.
Didn't find any errant parts in there that he had vacuumed up, huh?
And sadly, no.
Well, after that
So
after that exposure, you probably weren't too keen on digging through it to see what else was in there.
no, I was still there for a few more hours, but uh, it was it was it was sad it was very empty. An apartment that I was so used to being stacked to the ceiling with stuff. There was so much nicotine on the walls that you could actually see where the shelves were,
Oh wow.
like the
Yeah,
outline
I've
of the
seen
shelves.
places like that. I've seen quite a few places like that where it's like you pull pictures off the wall of someone that's been living in there that's a smoker, and it's like you can tell where the pictures were hanging at.
Yeah, and these things weren't even touching the walls. These were shelves that were, maybe a few inches away, but you could still see the shadow of where the shelves were from the nicotine. So,
Oh God. So
yeah, fond
I
memories of Dawn.
well, God bless Don. Thank God that we had Don to bring us these parts, and thank God we have you to carry on this legacy because I'm sure just Michael had pushed you a bit, Mike had pushed you a bit, but there's I'm sure an uncountable number of people that are glad that you continue to carry on Don's parts. And there's some other stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to save that for Wonderfest, but there is kind of like the current situation with 3D printers and that we're going to talk about when we get to Wonderfest, and hopefully don't have the pixelation going on when I'm talking to you. I think I got to work on my server for receiving your video. I think is what the issue is, but everything else has looked pretty good. A couple of things to work on, but so just real quick though. Uh, I have a lot of questions, but Michael Mitchell asked, "Are you going to do a Miranda class shuttle bay?" Well,
I would like
I,
to.
I thought about doing that one for you. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I just
Uh,
and that kind of goes into what I was just talking about with the 3D printing, you know, debacle that we kind of have going on right now. That we need to talk
right.
about. We need to talk about at Wonderfest. So I don't really want to get into that too much because that kind of goes into that topic. But I did think about doing, and I don't know. We'll see. I may do one for you. We'll see. I gotta because I do have this other Reliant build that I'm kind of working on the side that's getting all of my mods, whereas the one that I did was I was too far along to add some of the modifications to it that I had made for it. But so this one, the second one I've got that I'm working on now is actually going to have every mod that I've done. Um, because I think I'm
Is
done
that
with
that
mods now.
200? Is
No,
that
no.
200
Oh
scale
God,
one?
don't even bring up the 200 because so that's kind of I've had people comment. So I've made so many mods for this Reliant. When am I just going to put out my own Reliant my own Reliant
Right.
model? And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't have the CAD experience to do something like that. I can do bits and pieces. I can do details, but making an actual model is beyond the scope of my capabilities right now. I have been working on CAD for, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years maybe, but that's all been Tinkercad, and I've been tinkering a little bit with Blender, and there was another 3D kind of software I was working with, but I haven't gotten the experience in either of those to really kind of do my own. I have been modifying the uh, the game body. Uh, was that? I think it's one. I think it's scaled at a 1/350 when you download it, I believe.
Okay.
But I upscaled it by a bit to make it a 1/250 thereabouts. That's a rough estimate as to what the size is, and I've done a couple videos on that, and I kind of stalled out on it because, and this is getting a little bit away from topic, but that's okay. We're going to talk about this more at Wonderfest too. But I kind of got to a stall point on it because the roll bar, a lot of the details on the game body 1/350 Reliant are just so terribly inaccurate. It's almost like they did it on purpose. You know, like it was going to
Yeah.
save them, like it was going to save them from getting a C and D order or something. I don't know, but and I'm surprised the models that game body has put, because I'm pretty sure they don't have licensing for these models. I'm kind of surprised that they're able to put this stuff out. Maybe it's they're in a different country or something. I don't know, but the some of the details on it are just so terribly. And I talk about this more. You can go find the video where I talk about this. It's just so terribly inaccurate. It's like they did it on purpose. But what I'm stuck on right now is the roll bar for that from Game Body. It has the lightning bolt pattern on the top of the roll bar, but it's missing from the underside. So it needs to be added. And it should be a simple thing of just copying that lightning bolt pattern, or even making my own lightning bolt pattern and then flipping it and putting it on the underside. But Tinkercad can't handle the file size. It's Tinkercad can only handle, I forget how much, but it can't handle large files. Um,
Hmm.
which is surprising that that one file is too big for Tinkercad to handle, but yet everything else on that model I've been able to mod in Tinkercad. And I've had people ask, "Where are you going to put out that?" Well, I can't put the parts out because it's still the game body file. Somebody has gone through the trouble to make that part, and all I've done is modify it. And I don't believe in just because I modify something, I'm owner of that part. That's not
Right.
something
There's
that
a
I
lot of
do.
that going on.
Yeah, and see, I don't do that. I don't get into that. I was hoping that some of the parts I could maybe do and it be my own work, and it would be a separate thing that I could put out for people. But the mods are so in depth on that model because it's just even the windows around. Where's my? Let me grab my one 537. The windows around the game body were just so. Now, of course, this is correct because it's mine and I know how to do it right. But the windows on the game body file were just so, and I'm looking at this backwards, but they were just wrong. I mean, they were way off. They're just. It's like, did anybody even really look at this model very close? You know, and I'm a detail oriented person. I like getting into details, and I like trying to do the best I can to try to accurize something when I'm building it. But it's just they're so ingrained in the part itself that there's no way I can separate it out. You know, it's just the way the file is made. It would be impossible for me to make. I can't make window inserts for that because you basically would have to print the model and then cut it all up, because not everybody is versed enough in CAD software to be able to take those window inserts. If I was sold the file, to be able to take those inserts and insert it into their own, um, to remove the windows, for example, in CAD, and then put those in its place. So
Yeah.
it's not something I can do. You know, like I said, I'm not gonna take somebody else's work and modify it and then say it's my own. And because there has been people that have been doing it, and it's been an issue. And there's one or two people in particular that reached out to me that I know that's what their plans are, is to just take it and sell it as their own work. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm just gonna put that to a stop right now. I'm not gonna put this file out because I'm not gonna have somebody else's work put out as their own. I won't do it, and I'm not gonna let somebody else take my modifications and put it out as their own work as well. So unfortunately, that's the way that is. But the 1/250, I would like to get done. Um, I've probably printed like 75% of the model so far. I've got a couple other parts, but other than the roll bar, everything else is already modified and good to go. And some of the parts that I've done for the 1537, I can easily scale up to 1250 because I did put a bit of detail into them, and you can scale them up a little bit. But so that's where that is. Um, let's see. Sweet Lovin' Biz Kits. Really looking forward to those 1537 Reliant parts. When are we going to see them, Cass?
Yeah, well, once I can get my 3D printer issues figured out. So I did print these off today. These are the bottom vents, and these seem to have turned out really good. I've been having 3D printer issues for a couple of months now. So I've been
Yeah, we talked
trying to
about that a
figure
little
out
bit
what.
last night too. That's kind of what we were talking about yesterday
Yeah,
too, trying to
and
work that out.
yeah, and you and me were we're trying to
Because I'm like, well,
troubleshoot for like two
I print
hours.
them. I don't have any print lines, so we kind of worked through that last night. And I think your that part that you just showed, I think turned out a bit better, right?
Right, and but the other ones where I have printing flat, they have terrible layer lines, and regardless of whether they're flat or on supports, they really shouldn't be.
Right.
And my fear is that maybe I have a flawed printer, which is still under warranty, so I should, but I'm trying to run a small business here, and I can't keep having these setbacks. Uh, that being said, um, a lot of people think that I'm this big organization, like I've got employees and I have like a big shop. And the truth is I don't have any of that. I'm a one man band. Uh, I work outside of Lake Monster. I do have a day job. I'm also a caregiver, and uh, and I do Lake Monster when I have time. Sometimes I only have an hour or two a night or every other night, and it's not. One night I'm making parts, another night I'm pulling the parts from the molds, another night I'm filling orders, another night I'm working on a master. Uh, if I was able to do this all day, every day, um, that would be my ultimate dream. But Lake Monster does not pay the bills.
Right. Right.
Um, my full-time job does.
Eh,
And I don't even really make a lot of money doing this. I do this because I love the hobby so much, and I love the people that do the hobby, and I love seeing people building. It's one of my things I love is I love seeing the work that people do. And if they're using my parts, that's even better.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
something pretty cool about seeing somebody using your parts, and because I know that's what Jordan and Ken are doing now. They're kind of getting the trial run of those parts from you that I
right,
made. So it's kind of cool watching their videos and kind of getting their critique on it and feedback on it. Because I've had I've had people comment a lot about why don't I just put the parts out myself, and we've had this conversation too. It's just that's not. Could I make money off it? Could I make a lot? I could probably make some decent money off it. If I was just going to print out some parts, but I don't. That's not my thing. That's not my. I'm not in this for the money. I do this because I enjoy the hobby. I enjoy supporting the hobby community. And I love doing sci-fi models. I like modding my ships, but I don't want to get into the thing of printing and being responsible for shipping and taking orders, and that's why we kind of have this mutually beneficial thing here, where I kind of make the parts, you get them, and you buy them from me, and that's all I get a little bit of something for the work I put into it, and that's all I'm looking at is I don't do it for the money. I do it because I enjoy doing it, and this is my hobby. I don't want to turn it into my job, and
right,
um, that's kind of your thing to do. You have the experience in casting stuff, because there is some stuff I'm sending you that you're doing casting on, I believe, right?
right. Casting using molds, that's my preferred method of making things. 90% of what I have on my site is resin cast. Uh, Now, the majority of the Reliant parts will be 3D printed, like the more intricate ones, the parts that have like louvers in them and things like that, or openings. Uh, Most of those will probably be 3D printed.
Right.
I just need to tune in my 3D printer to come up with a good product. Now, another reason why I haven't released these parts just yet is because I wanted to make sure that I had all of the parts that you were making, because I know you've been coming out with parts every other week, and I wanted to. If I were to release the parts on my website, say like a couple months ago, then you've made new parts on your
Right.
YouTube videos. Then next thing you know, people are going to be emailing me saying, "Oh, I just saw these parts. Can you sell these to me?" And then next thing you know, I'm having to do stuff out, like I'm making orders outside of my website, and I would like to just release these when you've got everything that you plan to make released, and then and my goal, to answer this other person's question, my goal is to start producing these pieces for the Reliant when I get back from Wonderfest. Uh,
Okay.
so the parts that'll be resin cast for sure will be clear parts. Um, and then uh, and then as for instructions, I'm thinking what I'm going to do for the instructions is uh, is maybe just like a generic. This is how you remove a piece to put in a piece. I'm not going to make instructions for every little piece because that's going to take forever. Um, but and then maybe have like a diagram of where everything goes. I
Right.
think that'll probably be like a one-page thing.
And
You know,
reference
if
my videos. Reference my videos. That's the easiest way.
everywhere, yep,
Mine
yep,
and Jordan and
reference the
Ken
videos.
also now have, so they actually, and that's a great thing about other people using these parts is that they actually had some suggestions for uh, how to apply these parts a little easier. For one example was, and I'd actually thought about doing this, but again, it would be because you don't have a Cricut, I'd be the one doing it, and it's just like I said, it's not my thing to get into making masks and parts. But they had talked about making a template, and I thought about doing this with my vinyl cutter, just making a template that you could stick to the model that would
Hmm.
show you where to cut, how to cut it out in order for that part to fit in. But again, like I said, I knew if I did that, it would be me making the masks, and I didn't want to, like I said, that's not my thing. I don't want to get into making masks and making parts and stuff like that. I just want to build, because as you can see, it takes me a long time to build a model just as it is, just because my work schedule. I uh,
Yeah.
I work a lot, so um,
I
I
don't
get.
even have time to build my own models. The only time I have time I chair a model meeting at our local hobby town. We meet on Sundays for like 4 hours, and that's the only time I ever have to build my models. I have no time during the week. Uh, it's my daytime job. It's and maybe a couple of hours here or there with Lake Monster. Um, I wish I could do Lake Monster every day. It's if I'm only selling $20-$30 worth of stuff a day on Lake Monster, that's not going to pay the bills. That's you know, but the reason why I do it is because it fills my heart, and I enjoy working with resin, and I enjoy making these pieces, and even though my passion is sailing ships, I am a Star Trek fan. I love
Did
the
you
movie era
did you want to show your
very
sailing
much.
ship that you're working on? Your sailing. I know you got a ship there that you're working on.
Yeah, okay. This is a wooden ship that I'm building from scratch.
Even though we probably got a lot of sci-fi guys, maybe we got some shipbuilding guys on here watching
Yeah,
too.
maybe it's not a very popular hobby, the ships, but so I've been building this one since November, and this is a rib-on or a plank-on bulkhead model kit. Well, the bulkheads are the only part of the model that I kept. Everything else I threw in a box. But the only thing that's plastic on this are the staircases. Everything else is oh, and the lifeboat is made out of metal. Everything else is wood that
Is that
wooden
lashing
strip.
actually? Is that actually twine or string that's used for the lashing for that lifeboat?
That is actual string, and then I have the gamuts here. I don't know if you can see the gamuts. There's one gam or yeah, there's a gamut here and there's a gamut there. That's all thread. And this one, I mean, the last thing I have to do with this is mast sails and rigging. So there's going to be a lot of threads on
Yeah, the
this thing.
rigging's going to be interesting to see once you get done with that. That's pretty intricate work with that rigging on
It's
those.
going to be an absolute nightmare. But and then I don't know if you can see the back windows. It's there. The mesh on the windows, that's actually leftover screen door from when I replaced the door or the screen on my back door on my house. So you just kind of
TrekMod said, "Look at your buoyancy operated aquatic transport device." That's a that's an interesting technical term for it. Um,
for the for those that do ask me if it floats, yes, it does float,
it does
but it
float.
wa- but it tips over. There's no ballast in it, so it just so don't ask me to put it in water because it'll tip over.
So Ken asked, "Would you ever do a half-destroyed warp nacelle for the Reliant?"
I've never thought about that.
I mean, you could easily do some, and
Yeah, no, that actually sounds kind of fun.
you
Yeah,
could.
I'll take that under consideration for sure.
Michael actually pointed out you can do that. Some people do it with sprues, leftover sprues, and stuff to make
Yeah,
the framework with it. And I've seen some pretty cool builds with that. I actually, you know what? I see. There's stuff I don't want to get into yet, man, because I kind of want to talk about it at Wonderfest. But um, I'm
you know,
wanting to do
Matthew
a.
Peerless, yeah, he made a Matthew Peerless. He made a USS Constellation that's all blown up, and he used. You can tell he used evergreen strips and things like that for all the damage that the Planet Killer did. Uh, and I thought about maybe making one of those models. Of course, I haven't. I started a Star Trek model 8 years ago, and I haven't finished it. I need to kind of get back into Star Trek models again for myself because it seems like I'm doing them for everybody else these days. But yeah, that's something I could probably do someday. I'd like to come up with that kind of stuff once I get DLM completely rolled out, which will be the when I do the cutaway parts. Uh, then I can move on to extra, add-ons and alternate designs and things like that.
Because I've got I've got another talking about destroyed, kind of getting that destroyed look on some of your ships. I've got another Enterprise B I need to build at some point. I've still got my Pro model version that's clear plastic.
Mhm.
And my thought it was that I would just make some 3D printed parts so that I could, cut away part of the hull, make it look battle damaged, and put this 3D printed part so you get some depth to that. Because I know some people will paint and they'll do. I mean, really, the studio model of the Enterprise C was just they set off firecrackers and sparklers and stuff on it, and that's how they got the burn patterns. And then if you look at it real close, it's like they just basically just use like penciling to draw in like the girders for the supports for the
Oh
inside
yeah,
framework. It's just pencil work.
that's
It's
right.
all it is. I got some really good pictures that Adam Adam Schneider sent to me because he actually had and for a while there was this debate about, well, was the original model repurposed for the Yamaguchi in that? And for a long time, people thought, yeah, it was because there was some word from supposedly some of the people that worked on the set in the model shop that Greg Jean had gone back and totally redone the model to be reused as the Yamaguchi. And what was the other one? It was another one. I'm drawing a blank on it. The one that Riker commanded, I believe.
Oh,
Uh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was used for like two or three different ships. But then we come to find out that no, that original Enterprise C studio model still existed with the burn marks, and everything. And Greg Jean had built a totally new model because and we had this discussion, I think, at times where I was talking to you because we were talking about coming up with some modifications possibly for that model because it was like, well, if he just redid it, how did he get the whole hull to kind of change the shape a little bit because the shuttle bay was all different on the later models
right,
and a
right.
couple other things were different. It's like, how did he make these modifications without? So that kind of answered our questions when we found. And Adam Schneider actually he was in possession of that model for a period. He doesn't have it anymore, so don't go looking for it because he doesn't have it anymore. But he had it, and he sent me some really great pictures of it. which if I ever get around to doing another Enterprise C, I'll share. But as soon as I make sure Adam's good with it, I'm pretty sure he would be. Um, he but he had some really good pictures. But my thought was anyway, getting back to the point, was that I was going to cut the hole where the damage is going to be, make it look like it was blown open, but have this 3D printed part that kind of just glues to the inside of the hull that has girder work to it, and maybe even some mechanical stuff on the inside, so you get some depth into that
Yeah.
model rather than just being kind of two dimensional, whatever, like the studio model actually was. It was just there wasn't any depth to it, but because we're talking early '90s television, it sold because you couldn't tell the difference, and it looks, and if you look at it at a distance, it looks like it's like there's depth to it, but it's not. So
Well, it worked for me because when I first saw that episode, Yesterday's Enterprise, it was at our lake cabin, and we had a black and white TV, and that's the episode. I watched that episode in black and white, so it worked for me
and, I,
until.
and I'm sorry if I said Enterprise B. That was a mistake. I did mean Enterprise C. Michael Mitchell said that I mentioned B. I did mean C. I think what happened was I've been looking at somebody had asked if you were going to do a neck for the Excelsior 1000 Excelsior Enterprise B, and I think that kind of goes into what the demand would be if you put the work into it. There are some, and that kind of goes into our discussion when we get to Wonderfest about the
Yeah.
availability of 3D printed parts, and you know what you've got to weigh against your time. Is it going to be worth doing it, or is everybody just going to download this 3D printed part and do it? And I don't want to get
Well,
into
let's. Yeah.
I don't want to get into a discussion about right now. Again, that's something I want to talk about at Wonderfest. But so when we do we're going to do a part two kind of to this at Wonderfest and talk about more about what you're doing now, and how the 3D printed madness is kind of affecting your work, and how you're kind of adapting to that. Like you were talking about now, doing 3D printing pretty much these Reliant parts. You're going to do some casting, and I think Mike might have mentioned about doing some casted parts as well as 3D printed, which is kind of what you're doing with the Reliant upgrades that I did. Some of them
Right.
will be cast, some of them are going to be 3D printed because some of the details you can't really recreate too easily. You can't make like the forward observation lounge I did for the 1350 Enterprise A. You can't really
Right.
do a mold for that because of such intricate parts in it, like the ship wheel and that. You wouldn't be able to really make a mold for
You're
that.
right.
So that's kind of something, and that kind of, and again, I don't want to get into this discussion because it's something I want to do at Wonderfest. But there is some stuff that 3D printing is great for that you can't really do with the casting, and that's kind of I think what you're kind of transitioning to and adapting to, is that there are some things that you can do now with a 3D printer that you couldn't do before with
Right.
just casting.
So for me, my goal is to. I'm always going to do resin casting as my primary. Because cast resin holds up over time much better than 3D printed resin, whether it be the filament or the resin. Um, the cast resin it stands the test of time. Um, Stuff that is very delicate that I could make a mold of, but not be able to extract the part from the mold without destroying that part. That's where 3D printing comes into play.
Right.
But otherwise, 3D printed resin is much more brittle. Uh, so those will be the 3D printing does have a place in the future of Lake Monster. Uh, and I am teaching myself how to use Blender and things like that. I know that there's people that are light years ahead of me on that sort of thing, and I'm not really in any hurry to try to catch up with anybody. I'm kind of going at my own pace. If people see stuff that they want to 3D print themselves, I think that's great. I get a lot of requests for different projects. Almost every day, people email me saying, "Hey, you should do this or you should do that." And if I see a market for it, then I'll put it on my list. Uh, and uh, and this summer, I'm hoping to finally uh, fulfill the wishes of some of these folks that have reached out to me, especially in terms of the 1/650th scale classic Enterprise. My goal is to have all of the upgrade pieces for that done by the end of the summer.
Okay.
So I know that's when I've gotten a lot of requests for the BC deck and all that stuff. I've got a bunch of those kits myself that I want to build, and I'd like to have those parts on them too. So in case if anybody's curious, 'cause I do get a lot of emails about that.
And Ken asked about replacement parts for the TOS bridge kit. Ken, which scale? I don't know which scale he's talking about, but and Mike, thanks for pointing out
Well,
that. Thanks for pointing out. Just Michael Mitchell had mentioned it was the Excalibur. That was the other one I couldn't think of.
yes, the Excalibur. Yep.
Excalibur. But
Um,
because this Cult TV man carries your parts, but does he have any TOS bridge parts on there that are yours, or is he carrying somebody else's TOS bridge parts?
well, those are mine.
Okay, so
Uh,
so you do have TOS bridge
eventually,
parts on there.
yeah, eventually, what I'd like to do with Cult TV Man is once I get the, how I have the upgrade kit for the refit, I'd like to have one of those for the classic, where instead of buying these parts individually, you can get a bag of them of all the parts that you need to accurize your TOS. Now, the last question just now, uh, the answer to that question is yes and yes to both models. Uh, and the other model I'm talking about is the Cutaway, the 22-inch Cutaway. That was kind of Don Matthews' signature kit. I think that's kind of where he got started. Or at least that's the kit that made him famous. Those pieces that Don made, he did a very good job, but I think they could be improved. The BC deck on that model itself, I think, is extremely inaccurate. And
It is. I'm looking at it
yeah,
now. It's teardrop shaped, and it shouldn't be.
no, it's not supposed to be that way at all. So that is going to be completely redone for the Cutaway, and the deflect or the sensor dish housing, that's going to be redone. Uh, there's at least 3 or 4 pieces on that Cutaway kit that um, just need to be completely remastered. Where that is saying I'm not even using the molds that Don had used. I'm going to be either 3D CADing these myself or handcrafting these myself. That's
And
one of
I
the
am
reasons why
bringing
that's
this.
going to be probably the last DLM kit.
I am
Oh
bringing this to
yes,
Wonderfest to donate. I'm donating this to you so that if there's anything in here that you can revive, because I think you said you hadn't seen one of these in a while, right?
right. All I have are just the molds, and I
Yeah.
haven't seen the actual pieces. I haven't had those in hand unless I were to make my own using the molds, but those molds are in rough shape.
Just want to point out, made for the universe in Fargo, North
In
Dakota.
Fargo, North Dakota. Fargo, that's where I was born there. I
That's
was
pretty cool.
I was born in Fargo. Yep.
I bought this and I put it away and I haven't really looked at it. And I'm like, look at that, made for the universe, not just the world, but the universe. But
Yep.
Don was a character. But yeah. So let me see. We had another. Two, did I mention? Well, yeah, I talked about the neck. We're going to talk about that later. Ken was talking about a 125 bridge. I guess is that for the kit that came
Is
out?
that huge one that I've seen on Facebook?
Yeah, is that the full? Now they have the full bridge for.
Oh, the 132nd scale, the
Is that
ANT version.
132nd? I'm guessing he said 125, but I'm guessing he's talking about the 132nd. Well,
Yeah.
he also asked about, does anyone have a paint mask for your Nebula mod cast? Your Nebula mod. Does anybody? I'm working on one for the Phoenix variant.
I do have. They're on Don's computer still. I should probably maybe upload them to mine. There is a decal set. That I don't know if Don ever used it or not, but they're decals that are meant for the Sutherland version of the Phoenix, the one with the triangular pod. I was not going to offer those unless I could either have them screen printed, because the decals that I offer are laser printed on clear decal film, and toner is very, very transparent. There's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
That's why anybody who uses my decals, I always tell them to try to, be aware of your base color that you're putting these decals on, because it'll show. Anything will show through those. And since the Phoenix is more of a gray color, uh, those decals would be, the colors would not be right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Um,
totally get that. I know sometimes you recommend a certain color base coat under your decals as well.
yeah, either white. The very darkest would be insignia white. Like if you use like the Excelsior decals. Um, I do not have an ELP printer, and usually the ones that are out there usually need to be fixed, and I just don't have the money for that. Um, and and as for decals that are screen printed, you send those off somewhere, and then they charge you a certain amount per color,
Oh,
and
real
those
per
can get
color,
enormously
really?
expensive if you have a lot of colors.
Gotcha.
Yeah, per color. So if you've got, if you've got like just like, and then it's not just the color that they charge for, the clear coat is also considered a color as well.
Oh,
So
wow, really? The
yeah,
clear coat itself
so
is a
it's the yeah, the decal business. Yeah, the decal business is very the de how do I say this? The decal business can either make or break you. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And
Like you
we were
really
gonna have
need
a
to know what you're.
I'm sorry, we were gonna have a full discussion on this at Wonderfest, but unfortunately Gus from GCals.
Sure, we'll save it till then.
No, no. I was gonna say, I mean, it's not. We can talk about it now if you want. If there's something you
Oh
want to
yeah,
talk
because
about right now,
Gussie's not going to be there.
Gus
Yeah,
isn't gonna be able to
unfortunately,
make
yeah.
it, and now unfortunately Mike Hazelwood isn't gonna make it, and I was gonna have those two and you on a panel talking about all things decals, and now, unfortunately, that's not going to happen because they're not going to. Two of my three aren't going to make it, and I was thinking about maybe video conferencing them in. We'll see. Um, we are going to. I am going to. I'll tell you before I get into that. Go ahead and finish what you were going to say about decals, though.
Oh, so yeah, the decal business is it's because of the limited technology that I have access to. Um, there's certain decals I cannot make. Like for example, if someone were to ask me, can you make registry decals for a custom Galaxy class starship I want to make? Um, the first thing I'm going to say to them is, I need to know the exact base color of your ship, because if I try to print decals on clear film for a starship that's gray, your red is going to be a very, very, very dark maroon. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah,
that gray is going to bleed through that red toner.
right.
So that's why at the moment I'm only doing decals for white starships.
And also, what I didn't realize was too is that you can only print white apparently with the more expensive printers.
Yeah, some of those printers are 5 digits.
Yeah, and Gus,
It would
that's where
never.
Gus comes in because Gus actually can print in white. Just I think just within the past year, he actually
Right.
ponied up for something where he could actually print in white. And I didn't realize that was an issue. I'm like, really, you can't print in white? You have to have a more expensive printer to print in white. And I don't know what the specifics are of that, why you can't print in white, but that was a discussion we could have had if we were going to have our, and we still may. I don't know. I'll talk. Gus is in on video conferencing in. I know Mike is too. So we still might have that discussion at Wonderfest. But just to, I was looking, so Trek Mods had mentioned about the Year of Hell Voyager, some of the build. Yes, that was a really cool build. That was it had the flickering lights and everything in it. That was an excellent build. But Ken did
My
say,
favorite episode.
yeah, yeah, the Year of Hell. That's actually, to be honest with you, Voyager was the only Star Trek show that I watched from beginning to end as it premiered, as the episodes premiered. Because Next Generation came out in '86, and I was a kid. I was into more to other things. I didn't really get into I'm sorry, Next Generation. Did I say Voyager? Or did I say
Uh,
Next Generation premiered in '86? And
87.
was it '87? Why was I thinking '86? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, but it premiered 86, 87, whichever. But I didn't really get into the Next Generation until probably its third or fourth season. So, like 89, 90. And then that's when I started watching it. And of course, I've been back and watched all the other episodes, some of them multiple times, because Pluto TV has a great channel where you can just put it on and watch it. So, but and then Deep Space Nine, again, I don't think I really started getting into Deep Space Nine until the later seasons. Just I watched like the premiere episode, and then my cats are knocking everything over. Um, but Voyager, I think, is like the only one I really watched from start to finish. Because even when Enterprise came out, honestly, I didn't watch Enterprise the whole series until my friend asked me. Well, he wasn't a friend then, but he asked me to build a NX-01 for him, a 1350, and I don't do commission builds really, but I told him let me. He asked, "Would you do a build for me?" I'm like, I don't do commit because again, it's that whole money thing. It's like when money gets involved, things get kind of can get kind of testy. You know, they can get there's an amount of pressure that comes with that. And this is probably
Yep.
a topic for a whole nother discussion. But it
Yeah,
looks like
that
my
happened with me when I built the USS Constitution for a guy, not the frigate, not the starship. It was the Ravel
yeah
96 scale,
yeah I remember you talking to
and
me about that and telling me all the everything that
yeah,
was going on with
I don't
that.
know if I
But
would really want to do that again.
yeah,
And
my
the
hats
model
off
turned out
to
great, but
oh yeah it
I didn't
did.
like the
But
customer.
my hats off to the guys that do those commission bills because I just couldn't. It's not something I do. But anyway, he had asked me if I would do a build for him. I'm like, what do you what I mean, what do you want built? And he was like a 1350 NX-01. I'm like, sure. I'm like, I'll do it. I'll do it on the channel. I haven't built one. I haven't even had my hands on one. So when he sent that to me, then automatically it was like, okay, now I got to go back and watch all the Enterprise episodes. You know, watch the series. So I didn't watch it until just probably 3 years ago or so. Was when I watched the Enterprise series. So, um, and now I'm in love with the NX-01. It's one of my favorite ships. Which again, I don't want to get into because that's a discussion that we're going to have at Wonderfest. It's about favorite models, favorite builds, stuff like that. So, everybody that you guys are watching now, everybody that watches after the stream is done. We're going to have some discussions at Wonderfest, and I'm going to try to put up a schedule. But right now, Wonderfest, and as last time I checked, they still hadn't put up their schedule yet for what they've got going on. So just to kind of give everybody an idea, Wonderfest that Friday, I think it's the 30th, right, Cass?
Yes, the 30th.
So
Yep.
that Friday, the first, it's not really the first day of Wonderfest because technically Wonderfest doesn't start till Saturday, but we're going to do little kickoff show of Wonderfest. Probably aiming for about 7 o'clock Central Time. So that would be what 8 o'clock Eastern and 5 o'clock Pacific, I believe. I'm on Pacific time and I can't even tell you right now. But so we're gonna do. My plan is for us to do a little kickoff show. Me, you, and a couple of the other guys that we kind of we hang out with there. Chris and who else are we gonna have? Scott will be there.
Scott, yep, he'll be there. Yep.
Mike was gonna be there, but Mike's not gonna be there now. Sorry, Mike. But so my plan is just to kind of give everybody an idea that first day, Friday, we're going to do a little bit of a kickoff show, kind of talk about our favorite things from Wonderfest of the past, what we're looking forward to this Wonderfest once we have the schedule in hand, because like I said, they haven't put the schedule out yet as to what they have a lot of classes there. They have presentations. Usually, Polar Lights does a presentation where they announce stuff. Um,
Round two, yeah.
yeah, round two Polar Lights, and we're either gonna find out at that discussion or when we walk into the vendor room and we see their table and hopefully everybody's not, I said this yesterday. I got to watch what I say because I try to keep this G at least PG if not G. But you know,
I know where you're going with this.
um, you know, if we walk up there and we see a 1350 Reliant sitting on the table, you know, some uh, presentation of that, everybody's just going to be like, I'm not even gonna, I'm not going to do it. I said I wasn't going to do it. So, but everybody knows
Let's just
what
say
I'm.
they might have to get right. They might have
Everybody's
to
going to
have
have the
riot
same
control
reaction.
there.
They know what I'm talking about. I don't even have to say it. It's
Yeah.
like, you see that 1350 Reliant, that demo or whatever. I doubt that's going to happen. But if it did happen, that would just blow everybody's minds.
I'm
Um,
going to say they might need to increase their police presence that they haven't already.
but yeah, I don't expect to see anything like that. But hopefully, we get an update on the Reliant because, and I've gotten called. People have called me out on this. And Cash, you were there with me, so you heard the same thing
I
said
was there. Yep.
that we were told last Wonderfest during their Jamie said during the presentation at Wonderfest that they had everything they needed to do a 1350 Reliant now, and that we would see a
Everything they
Reliant.
needed. Yep.
We would see a 1350 Reliant sooner rather than later. So, and that brings us back to the discussion of these mods for the 1537. There's going to be a place for it because there's going to be people that, one, can't afford the 1350 Reliant, and two, don't have the room for a 1350 Reliant. So these mods will still be relevant for the 1537 that I did. But I know.
Well, one thing you got to keep in mind with that 537 Reliant is that back in the day, this goes for the refit as well. And some of these earlier AMT Star Trek kits, they didn't do like, oh, we're only going to do 500 runs of this kit and then we're done. Now that back then they did thousands of runs of these kits. I mean, they
Right.
did containers and containers of them. So there's a lot of these kits that are still in the closets of builders. And that's why I think a lot of these parts will still be relevant for many years to come.
And I
Because
should say too, interject with that, is that Jamie did say it could possibly be a crowd-funded thing. So it may be a limited release, or it may be a crowdfunded thing to get it kicked off to start it at least. Because see,
right.
Trek Cadet says round two has repeatedly said no 1350 Reliant. That's not. They may have in the past, but I can tell you now, and I'm gonna live stream. I told you this. I'm gonna live stream round two's meeting or their announcements this year because last year I didn't live stream because usually they did. And when
Right.
people started saying, "Oh no, that's not true," I'm like, "Let me go back and find where they stream." And I can't find a live stream of it. They apparently didn't live stream it last year.
No, that yeah,
And
I remember he did say we have everything we need to come out with one. It will happen sooner, but it will be. We don't have a date yet, but it'll be sooner rather
right.
than later. That's what Jamie Hood. I heard him say that too.
And he did say, like I
So
said, he did say it could be a crowd-funded thing to where,
yeah,
they've got to get a certain commitment on orders before they can do it. But because I know the issue in the past had been trying to get access to the original studio model to get measurements and photos. But what I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but what I believe is when Greg Jean passed, there were a number of reference photos that he took of the studio Reliant that nobody had access to till he passed. Nobody knew they existed, I guess. When he passed and they started auctioning off stuff from his estate, these photos became available. I've shared them on my build, the photos that became available that Greg Jean took. And a lot of those photos, I think, were of areas that round two didn't have clear images of and weren't able to get measurements because you could take measurements from a photo. Usually you can figure out, typically you need a reference point in the background, but you can typically take measurements and figure it out based off of what scale you're working at. And
yeah, and geometry and things like
right.
that.
So
Yeah,
my belief is that when Greg Jean's photos became available for the Reliant, that gave them what they needed, and I think that's why. And again, uh, I didn't ask him about this last year, and I don't think he's going to be there this year. I think he said last year was his last year because he was taking over a new role, and somebody else, I guess, will be there instead of Jamie
yeah.
this
Jamie
year.
Hood kind of took over. He's like overseeing all of the models now, not just science fiction.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he got quite a promotion.
Yeah. He got a step up, which is unfortunate. I like Jamie. Jamie's he's a pretty good guy to talk to, and he didn't mind answering questions whenever you had them. I made a couple of comments the first Wonderfest I was there about, oh, this is inaccurate, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I shouldn't be telling Jamie that because it's like I didn't mean to take away from the work that round two has done, and I love all the models they put out, but I was just maybe not nitpick so much. It's kind of like you know what I'm talking about because I'm sure people nitpick about your stuff too. You know, it's like, well, this isn't right, or this could be done better.
Yeah, every
But
so often I'll get an email from someone, saying that, this could have been better, and it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but maybe someday, but this is what Don had, and maybe someday I'll come up with something better, but maybe down the road.
yeah,
But I talk about Jamie Hood though. He has told me, um, he told me personally that he loves the Reliant and he wants to do it. He wants to do it.
yeah, I've heard
So
him
I
say
think
that too.
so. So
He was
there's
very aware of the want and demand for a 1350 Reliant. But and there is some confusion. Like I know Trek Cadet was talking about it had been posted on YouTube at one point that there was on the I guess round two's YouTube channel no Reliant, but trust me, believe me that and that's why I'm going to stream their event this year if they don't do it themselves because I'm going to ask questions about that and try to get answers for everybody. So just stay tuned and look out for that stream when I do it because we're gonna press round two to get some answers and try to get some clarification on exactly what's going on with the 1350 Reliant. But and I know there were some aftermarket kits that were put out, and again, I'm surprised they haven't. I don't know if they've got Star Trek licenses to do it. Um, Typically, you know when something's getting ready to come out when round two starts putting out cease and desist on certain models. You
right.
know, it's so we're going to ask questions. We'll get answers uh, at this Wonderfest. So stay tuned. We got what is it? It's 13 days to Wonderfest. So T minus 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now. Can't wait. It's if you guys haven't been to Wonderfest before, it is for sure a pilgrimage for sci-fi and horror. They do horror there too, and do a little bit.
Yep.
Of, apparently, anything is acceptable now because last year we had Frasier, with dioramas, and they actually won awards. So
A
which is
gold.
cool.
Yeah, they got a gold.
I'm for anything model, model build. What I don't really get into is going to the IPMS shows and like 90% of what you see is military models. That's cool and all. It's just not my thing. I've got um, one military model here, which I don't know if I'll ever get to it, and I paid a buttload of money for it because it's got mad photo etch, a ton of photo etch with it, and it's an Arleigh Burke destroyer. Um, and it's got a bunch. I bought this photo etch kit. I think the photo etch alone was like $180 for this photo etch kit. And it's just
Jeez.
I'd love to build it because I like the intricacy, but at the same time, it's just military stuff's not my thing. It's just everybody's got their thing that they're into. Sci-fi, horror. You like horror? Matter of fact, I gave you that mummy model last
Yep.
year, right? Okay.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I've got about $900 worth of horror kits in my closet. So,
some that your wife likes and some that she doesn't like.
well, yeah, well, she doesn't know about the Trumpeter 200 scale Olympic that I just bought from the hobby store I work at. That's when she finds out about that, she'll shoot me. That thing's 53 inches long.
Yeah,
It's
because didn't you?
huge.
My cat, one of my cats. There's Colby,
Oh, that's your
troublemaker,
kitty right there.
troublemaker.
So, speaking of models, different kinds of models in science fiction, I've decided I am going to bring my Killdozer for the contest this year. So,
That would be on the horror front. That's a bit morbid. People don't know
yeah, I
the
was thinking
details,
maybe more
but
history, but
if people
yeah.
don't know the details
Well,
behind the killdozer, maybe clue them in real quick. We're gonna wrap this up here shortly because we're almost pushing 2 hours. I didn't even
oh
think we are gonna
wow,
be
geez,
talking this
time
long. Yeah.
flies.
So we got about 14 minutes left. So we'll wrap it up sometime between in the next couple minutes. For everybody that's kind of sitting here going, oh, when's it gonna be over? A couple more minutes.
It,
But go ahead and tell everybody about your killdozer, Cass.
oh, okay. Uh, so I'm not really, like the kind of person that would want to do something like that. But last summer I was dealing with a lot of drama. I was trying to get some repairs done to my house and some other things, and I just kind of felt like there was like this infectious, not my problem kind of attitude that everybody seemed to have, and it really one day it really boiled over. I had this AMT model kit of a Caterpillar bulldozer, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it because one of my friends gave it to me, and I just, I don't really do those kinds of models. and it was sitting in my closet, and I was thinking maybe I would just put it on eBay or something. Well, then I was on the Roku channel looking for something to watch, and I came across this documentary called Tread. I'm like, oh, is this what I think it is? And I watched it, and it had to do with this guy in Granby, Colorado, who basically went to war against the city over zoning laws and other things. And he spent like a year fortifying this Komatsu bulldozer, and he turned this thing into a tank. And one day things boiled over, and he drives this thing out, and he starts demolishing the city with it. And that was kind of the motivation to build this thing, because I had it up to here with people, and that was kind of my way. Models is how I deal with things, and that was my way of dealing with it, was
Right.
building my own killdozer out of a 25th scale Caterpillar model. And I've had it on display at the hobby store, and it's become very popular. And I thought maybe I'll, even though it's not science fiction or fantasy or horror, I thought maybe I'd bring it to Wonderfest anyways,
I
because it
know
is a scratch
some would
build.
argue that it could fit into the horror category, but
I I suppose if you had one of these things coming towards your house, yeah, that would horrify me too.
it was
So,
horrifying. It was horrifying.
but
Yeah,
I
that's it's
well
and
then
it's
I the other model, yeah, go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say it is pretty a pretty tragic story. I mean, it's you know, it, I haven't seen the documentary, but I know we talked about this at length, and it was, and I have seen a couple of little snippets about it. But and I don't, like I said on this channel, I don't do politics. It is, that's something I don't touch on. But some people feel like they have no other choice but to take certain actions. And didn't they?
Right.
He eventually didn't. The only thing that stopped him is he ran out of fuel or something.
His one of the treads went into the foundation of a building that had a basement,
Oh,
and
oh, oh,
he couldn't go any further, and his radiator had overheated
oh.
too.
That's what it
And
was. Okay.
yeah, he did end his life when he knew it was over.
Yeah.
That's the really dark part about it.
Right.
If anybody
Right.
would have been injured or killed, I would not have ever considered even building it. It was, and I'm not saying I agree with him at all. It's just something that it just kind of helped me get through my summer last summer by,
Because someone could have easily been injured or killed, but he wasn't out to do that. From my understanding, he was just trying to take action against what he thought was an injustice. And like I said, I don't want to get into it too much because I don't do politics on my channel, and some of it's political. But yeah, I look forward to seeing your Killdozer model at the in like you were talking about, in so many ways. A lot of us express ourselves through our models. It's not just a hobby or something. It's something, it's a stress reliever, but in some instances too, we kind of put some of ourselves into these model builds because there's some aspect of it that, we kind of relate to in some of these. So
right.
that's why I love the model building. I love the model building community. It's a great group of guys. But oh, okay. All right. So Trek, I thought you were talking about the 1974 movie. Apparently there was a movie called
Oh
Killdozer.
yes, there was a movie.
Okay.
I think it was called The Killdozer or something. I have not seen it. Um, but yeah, this one is based off of an actual event that happened about 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah. Right. So, but yeah. So I look forward to that. Unfortunately, I won't have any models to bring this year, because my Reliant. I might have it wrapped up before Wonderfest, but I won't have the base done. I've still got to do the base. That's going to be its own build episode because the base. If you've been watching my Reliant build, the base is kind of its own model in a way. It's something that I built in CAD and I'm printing and I'm working on, and it's going to have lighting. And I was talking to you about this yesterday. I really want to do a shields up display on it, and
yep, yep.
when you do the shields down, I want to have a sound clip of Ricardo Montalban going, raise, or the whole clip about where our shields are dropping, raise them, and then Ricardo Montalban, where's the override? The override. I want to have that all play on it, so it's going to take me a little bit of time to build it and work all that out and get that done. So I won't have that ready. And unfortunately, I won't have my 1350 Enterprise A ready either, which I'm eager to get there because it's got the forward observation deck
That's
in
coming
there,
too, just in case if
and that's
anybody's
all.
wondering.
Oh, I thought you didn't have that
That'll
up yet.
be
I thought you already had that up.
not not yet because of the 3D printing issues that I've had, but
Yeah.
that observation will be available on Lake Monster here around the same time as the Reliant bits. So if you've
Okay.
been waiting patiently, they are coming.
Yeah, but I've actually got to take a step back on this because in my move, I left some of the masking, window masks on, and they're so everything's cured and it's so stuck now that it's gonna. I can't get the window mask off without destroying it, so I'm gonna have to totally strip the rim down again and redo that. But I will have that done. I'm making progress on the secondary hull, but I'm trying to kind of. I was hoping to push to get this Reliant done, but it's not going to be done in time for Wonderfest. So I've got so many builds. You know, I'm sure a lot of other people have that issue too. It's just like I want to build this and I want to build that, and I've got these models that are just sitting in limbo because I just can't find the time. But just kind of where are we at? Hour 53 minutes. I'm gonna kind of work to wrap this up. I didn't expect to be talking this long, but we so like we do so often when you and I start talking, we just kind of have hours long conversations sometimes. But so just like I had said, and am I having a little bit of a lag on my video? It looks like it maybe at times, but just to kind of reiterate, so keep an eye out. This was kind of a precursor, a test run, so that when I go to Wonderfest, we can do a couple of live broadcasts from Wonderfest. Because one thing, I know there are some other creators, content creators that go there that do put out videos, but I kind of want to try to do a more in-depth presentation for Wonderfest. Like I said, I want to do kind of a opening night video of us talking about what we enjoyed from previous Wonderfest. I'm really looking forward to this Wonderfest. Just throw one thing out there: Robin Curtis is going to be there, so that's going to be really cool to see Savick there. So, oh, by the way, are you bringing your bomber jacket?
I was going to ask you if you wanted to match bomber jackets during
Yeah,
the video.
yeah, I'm gonna bring my bomber jacket. I'm gonna be wearing my Flash shirt. You know, business on the outside, party on the inside. So, I'm gonna
I was
be,
hoping I could find a Go Climb a Rock shirt before then, but I might have to settle for my turtleneck.
yeah, somebody
Uh,
I've seen
you
them.
know,
I've seen people put out a correct and accurate one at times, but I haven't found one recently. But so we're gonna do some videos. We're gonna have a discussion about. I'm gonna talk with Cass again there, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about what's coming with Lake Monster. We're gonna do some talks about 3D printing, I believe. Um, I'm gonna see if I can talk to some of the guys from Farragut Forward and maybe have a conversation about that. If you haven't seen Farragut Forward, it's on YouTube. Go
it's
check it
good.
out.
It's good. Yep.
Farragut Forward 2. I'm not sure if that's going to be the actual title, if that's just the working title right now. But Farragut Forward 2 is going to be coming out here. I'm not sure when, but they finished filming, I think. But they
Yeah,
still
and
got
then
post
the
production. I think they're
Starship
in post
Farragut are
production.
the yeah, and then they have the Starship Farragut episodes, which that they made like last 10, 15 years.
Right.
Those are also available and they're really good.
Yeah. But was that a TOS set for that
It's
Farragut?
TOS. Yeah,
And
yeah,
then the
that's
new one
TOS
was
era.
motion picture timeline. Is the new one? It's
Right.
the current films they're doing. But we're good friends with some of the people that work on that, so I'm hoping to have a discussion with them. And well, we're gonna see what else we get. We're gonna have opening night and definitely a closing night. We're gonna talk about the Wonderfest, what happened there this Wonderfest, and kind of a review. So we're gonna have a couple streams. I'll try to put out a schedule for that as we get closer. But again, Wonderfest as of as of last night, I haven't looked today, but as of last night, I think they hadn't put out their schedule for it, which I thought they'd usually put it out like 2 weeks out. But
Oh,
we should
no
be getting it here
hurry. I
shortly.
mean, nothing urgent.
Yeah, we should be getting it here soon, and then I can kind of figure out a schedule for our broadcasts to kind of have our conversations. But anyway, so it's been a great conversation. It's actually I've enjoyed this first live chat with you, Cass. It's always good talking to you, and
And
I
you.
appreciate everybody that's joined us. Thank you for the input and the feedback. I do have a couple things now to kind of work on for the next broadcast. so that yeah, the early Farragut series was filmed on the same TOS set for Trek Continu. Yes, I think Trek Continues bought that set from them, I believe. But we're gonna.
Yeah,
That's why I want to have a
correct.
conversation with these Farragut Forward
With
guys, because there's stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff just to talk about with Farragut Forward. So uh, we're gonna have a conversation about that. But as always, Cass has always been a good friend. He's been a good friend for a number of years now, and a great sponsor of my channel. So please show him some love. LakeMonsterDetails.com. Go check out what he's got going on. Again, when we get to Wonderfest, we're going to have another conversation, Cass, and talk more about what you've got going on and the future of Lake Monster. So, again, thank you, Cass, for joining me on this, and thank you to everybody that's kind of watched this program and everybody that'll watch it after it's done recording. Thank you for joining in, and we will catch you next time. So, thank you, Cass.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.